Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching another episode of Thoughts from the Crawlspace. Today, we are delighted to have Jon Good with us. Jon's a legend in this area, for those of you that don't know. Jon is the, I guess editor is the right term, of Real Producers magazine in Fort Wayne. It's a national magazine that's in, I think, 140 markets now.
Yep, 140.
So that's an amazing accomplishment. And so we're with Jon today to get some insight on how this all started, what's the purpose of it, how involvement with it can help your business and grow your reach and things like that. So, Jon, thanks for being here today,
Absolutely,
man.
Jamie.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, we've known each other for several years now.
Yeah.
We were one of the first people to get in the magazine in Fort Wayne.
Yep.
Unfortunately, one of my competitors beat me by like a day, I think. Or
it was like one issue. Right?
One issue. But we're thrilled to be part of it. We have found it to be very valuable, worth our investment. And I think that's what you want with anything that you invest in.
Yeah, 100%.
So talk about Real Producers magazine, where it started, what got you interested in it, and then kind of the niche that you fill in the market with that magazine.
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, Real Producers, like Jamie said, is a national brand nowadays. It started in Indianapolis. Indy was the first starting point for what is now a national franchise, which is pretty cool. And so the idea behind Real Producers is that we are a relationship building platform for the top agents to build connections with each other, and then top businesses to come alongside and network with that same group of top agents. And so really over the years, we've seen the need, no matter what the market is doing, that relationships are always key in every single part of the business. And real estate, relationships are critical. If you don't have connections, you're not going to have a successthe business. And especially from a realtor standpoint, no matter how many times they're reached out to by vendors and trying to be sold to, which happens all the time, the reality is they still need you guys as vendors. They have to have you, otherwise they don't have a business. And so really our goal is just to make it easier for the best people to connect. And so over the years, it's been amazing to kind of watch the growth of Real Producers, and my passion for it, I think, runs at even a deeper level than most, simply because I had a unique opportunity to watch the founder himself build it from the ground up. And so my product convictions, watching what it did to Indianapolis when it started, it's through the roof. And so when Fort Wayne's opportunity opened up, it was a no-brainer for me to step in and purchase that franchise and then run it myself. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. The way you talk about it is just you're very enthusiastic, and that's how you come across all the time. So he's not being fake. That's just how he is. So the magazine itself, talk about the content that's in there. What do you aim for each time, and how do you get that content?
Yeah, great question. So the content of the magazine is unique because everything is hyper-local. And what I mean by that is, since we are in 140 different cities, everything in my market with Fort Wayne is all about Fort Wayne. So every piece of content, the features in there are all about our local market. If you go to Indianapolis, it's all about Indianapolis. If you go to Orlando or San Diego or New York or Chicago, all of those are specific to that area. And so that's one of the powerful things about what we do is when the agents or the people that are reading our publication open it up, guess what? They know everybody in the magazine. They know it's relevant to them because it's about our city. And so the magazine is earned. It's not something that people have to subscribe to. And so the top 300 agents in our market earn the magazine every single year. And so we look at that every February, and we look at the volume of what was sold, and those top 300 are who receive the publication for free every month. In our larger markets, it does go to the top 500 agents, just because obviously there's a lot more agents in those areas. Right. But that's kind of the cool thing about what we do, is that it is a little bit of a trophy and a badge of honor for these realtors to earn the magazine. And so I kind of give the example and tell the joke of the fact that if you're in real estate, every single person knows who we are. But if you're not in real estate, you probably don't even know Real Producers exists. And that's on purpose. Like, it's supposed to be a super niche publication for the top agents. And so the content is all about the realtors. It's for the realtors. That's our readership. And so when you look at what's in every magazine, we've got 3 standard features. The first one is the cover story, which is about a top producing realtor or team in the area. We have a rising star feature that is about the exactly what it sounds like, the people who are newer, maybe who are a couple years into the business. Usually it's 3 or 4 years that are less in the business, but they're crushing it out of the gate. They're doing a great job. Yeah. And so hearing their perspective is super cool. And then the last piece that's always in every single magazine is one of our partners. So we get to feature you guys and businesses that work with us and partner with us to make it happen. So giving inside looks at the partners is just a great opportunity for the agents to read about you guys, to get to know you. But then the partners love it, obviously, because it's great exposure in front of their ideal audience. Basically.
Yeah. Elaborate on that a little bit with regard to why someone like us would want to be in a real estate magazine like that. You talked about relationships.
Yeah.
Beyond that, what's the benefit? Give your pitch when you're trying to get somebody else to sign up with your magazine.
Yeah. So we always say anybody that wants to work with realtors, first of all, is kind of our ideal criteria. That's the first thing we look at. If it's a company that works in the real estate industry, or maybe it's someone that's not necessarily in real estate, we've got a couple partners that we've got a private school that advertises with us. We've got a dentist office, which are not tied to real estate, but real estate is also the kind of the gatekeepers to the industry are the realtors. And so that's their point of view, is saying, like, when agents are bringing in new clients, that we want to be in front of those clients. And so they're trying to be top of mind in front of the gatekeepers who are bringing people in. But from a lender perspective, title companies, home inspection, roofers, insurance, home warranty, HVAC people, all of them have something to gain from realtor relationships. And so the kind of what we always say is, it's one thing to market to consumers, but a lot of times just from a roofing standpoint, that one consumer, once they have a new roof, they're not going to need one for 11, 12, 15 years, hopefully, right?
Right.
Unless the major happens.
Right.
But in the case of working with an agent, guess what? The turnover is constant. So they're bringing in majority of the people to the market. And so you have more opportunity to gain more business by working with someone like that versus going direct to the consumer. And so once again, if someone's looking to work with agents, there's no better way. And I know this just because of how long we've been doing this and how fast we've grown. It's just proof that there really is no better way to connect with the right agents than through real producers. And last thing I'll say on that is there are lots and lots of realtors in every single market. In Fort Wayne's area, Northeast Indiana, there's around 2,000 realtors if you include everything from Angola down to Bluffton, Columbia City, Warsaw, that area. There's around 2,000 realtors in that market. If you drive 2 hours south Indianapolis, there's around 9,000 or 10,000 realtors in the Indianapolis area. If you drive, call it 15 hours or 20 hours even farther south, go to Dallas. My buddy in Dallas runs 4 magazines in that market, and there's 90,000 realtors in Dallas-Fort Worth area. 90,000.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
Pretty
several
crazy.
Inspection companies in Dallas, and they would, it's funny you mentioned smaller market.
Yeah.
When people don't think of Fort Wayne as a smaller market,
Right.
but they go to a real estate office and there's 600 agents, and I just laugh at them. It's like, that's more than I got in my whole market.
Right. Exactly.
If I'm going that way, going in the South Bend market. So back to the vendors. It's not as simple as you're going to sponsor an ad in a magazine and get benefit out of it.
Right.
Talk about what the vendor needs to do to maximize the ROI on that.
Yeah, great question there. So the ROI is something I address with every vendor going into it. And I'm actually very honest up front in telling people that if you are expecting just to run an ad in the magazine and letting it sit there and business is going to come in, like, don't spend money with us. That's not what the ROI of our publication is. Mm-hmm. We are a branding platform for the right eyes to be on top of you guys at all times. And so the ad is a top of mind awareness play. And so I like giving the example of take your favorite Fortune 500 company. You're a big company. If you love Starbucks, you can use that as an example. If you use McDonald's as an example, Coca-Cola. In this case, I'll use McDonald's. But there was a podcast I listened to recently that was surrounding marketing in general, and it was interviewing someone that works with a ton of the Fortune 500 companies and their marketing strategies. And he said something very interesting, that he said most businesses look at ROI incorrectly. Most companies look at it as, I spend $500 a month to something, so I better get 2 or 3x return on that something. Otherwise, it's not worth it to my business. And they cut that out, right? When in reality, when you look at like McDonald's, for example, whether you love them or hate them, they're always busy, are they not? There's always people in their drive-thru.
There's always a line.
And the reason that there's always people in their drive-thru isn't the food quality, right? It's not the food quality.
We can acknowledge that.
Maybe, right? But the reality is it's because they're genius marketers. So every day, subconsciously, as humans, we're probably touched 7 to 10 times a day by McDonald's, if you think about it. So you're driving by the Arches, you heard a radio commercial, you watched a podcast, you saw a commercial there, you drove by 3 billboards on your way to work, right? You hear them on the radio when you're listening in the car. You watch a Netflix show, there's a couple commercials on there. You see them on TV. You see them everywhere. So by the end of the day, when you're craving that cheeseburger, what do you end up going to? You go to McDonald's because subconsciously you've seen it all the time, right? So that's what businesses should look at marketing as. It's like there's multiple ways to put your brand and your name out there. Real Producers is one of them. We also encourage our partners to get involved with other events in real estate. Don't just make Real Producers the only thing they do, but it can be a catalyst because it has the right people looking at your ad and staying top of mind. And the cool part too is like when you think about McDonald's, then even farther, at the end of their year, their marketing department, I guarantee, is not sitting there saying, the $50 million we spent on billboard ads, it's not worth it. They're not saying that because it's an intricate part of their marketing strategy. But can they track how many people came to McDonald's based on their billboard ad? No, there's zero chance they can decipher that, right?
Right.
And so that's what we say is the right people are looking at your ad constantly. And then the sweet spot to wrap this up is when people, vendor-wise, partner-wise, come to our events. They're engaged in our community. They're getting plugged in on the social media side of things. And people are then seeing you and they get to know you. Maybe they've shaken your hand. And then when they go through and read the magazine every month, they start to see your ad. So our reticular activator starts working, right? When they get to see you and all of a sudden, hey, that ad is not invisible to them anymore. They met you yesterday at this event. Hey, there's Jamie. I just saw him at that event. And all of a sudden their brain is open to seeing you as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like when you buy a car that you've never even seen before. And now you see it everywhere.
What do you see on the road? There's not more of those, right? There's just now you see them all the time.
You notice them. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. So it's essentially, how long has it been going now for you?
So almost 7 years. So
2018
was our first issue ever in Fort Wayne. So we're coming up on 7 years in February.
All right. So small business owner, essentially.
Yes.
Talk about those challenges. What's it been like? What are some of the lows and some of the highs?
Yeah. I would say the biggest challenge for us to get started, it's not really a challenge anymore, fortunately, but when we first started, we didn't have a physical concept or a physical magazine to show people. And so when we entered the market of Fort Wayne, it was at that point just a concept that we were pitching. And so even to this day, when we launch new franchises across the country, it's a concept in that market until it's proven and it's actually released, because we don't have a magazine until we sell enough advertising to pay for that magazine. And so there's a period of time that we call ramp up for every single person that runs a franchise with us. That takes on average 4 months to go through ramp up. And during that time, we are meeting with agents, we're meeting with vendors to try to sell advertising to the vendors in order to launch the publication. And so I remember to this day, that was probably the largest struggle, because when you look at real estate have been being done the same way for forever, right? And you come into a market to not disrupt it, but a little bit of just a new concept. And so I heard lots of, not pushback, but just uncertainty of like, oh, this isn't going to work in Fort Wayne. Like, people don't come to events here. People don't network outside of their brokerages. Like I heard all these things, or we're not going to read this. I heard that from maybe a handful of agents. And nowadays, some of those people are my biggest advocates, and they're like, we love this thing, So that was a struggle for sure up front.
Oh yeah. Anytime you start something new, you're going to have your detractors, and it's double the work. And so it looks like I often say if I'd pick up and move to a different state, I'm not starting another home inspection company. I know how hard it was to start.
Yeah.
So let me just go work for somebody. But I think part of the success, most of the success of this is you. You do a great job of connecting people. I remember some of our first events that we went to. You just flat out come up to us and you'd say, "Who do you want to meet? I'll introduce you."
Yeah.
And I'm usually shy. I'm hiding over in the corner behind
That's most home inspectors, though, Jamie. Most home inspectors are that way. We have a joke across the country that our home inspectors are wallflowers in a lot of cases. They hug the wall and they stick to themselves because you're used to being in a crawl space.
It actually makes me feel better.
Not just you. You're doing all right.
Yeah, well, that's why I send my wife to these things.
That's right.
Because she's really good at that, and the opposite of standing in a corner.
Yeah, right.
So, but no, seriously, you do a great job of connecting people. And there's tons of value in that.
Yeah.
So talk about behind the scenes. What goes on in getting a magazine ready to print? I mean, this is monthly. It's like month. As soon as, this is probably a stupid analogy, but I do payroll every 2 weeks.
Yep.
I get it all together. I analyze it. I do this. I send it out. And I can take a breath for about a minute and a half. Then I can start on the next one.
Yep.
Same.
That's how it feels like. Yes, 100%. Like, I mentioned the ramp up process, and what's interesting about that is every franchise owner goes through that process, and at that point you don't do anything with content at all, right? But when we get close to print and it's time to go, that hits you like a truck. because it happens and it doesn't stop. It keeps coming every single month, like you said. And so the goal is, and what we've built in our business and most businesses across the country with Real Producers, is we want to be 2 or 3 months out on our content. If you get too close to the deadlines, because we do have a hard deadline, we work in a deadline business. If we don't have certain things in, my deadline is the 20th of every month. So if we don't have stuff in by the 20th, stuff won't run in that magazine. That's just how it is, right? And so it really, from a back end standpoint, this is where we've been very lucky to have such an awesome parent company. And so a little bit more of the backstory, but our founder took the idea and the concept that was very similar to the concept of our parent company already. So our parent company has been around 25 plus years. It's called the N2 Company. They are the industry leader when it comes to niche publications. And so their main product for the last 20 years has been a neighborhood publication that would go out to your affluent or richer neighborhoods. And it's the same concept. They feature the residents on the covers. They share their stories. They do like a pet of the month, a student of the month, a yard of the month, things that are relevant to that neighborhood. And so you'd obviously have a lot of businesses want to advertise in front of that group of people. And so our founder knew that concept already and saw the same idea of what we could do with Real Producers, but more intentional within the real estate brand, right? Which is already so necessary. Real estate is all about relationships, which we already discovered and touched on. But now we have a way to bring together the right people at a higher level. And so what's neat about that is N2, being the large company that they are, they're a $200 million annual business. They have all of the resources for us to publish the magazine. I'm not printing that in my basement every month, right? So I don't have to do any of the design. I'm creative, but I'm not that creative on the design side. So fortunately, I don't have to do any of that stuff. We are, as publishers, what I would call content gatherers. So I'm in charge of bringing together the photography, getting the articles written. And then we submit that, and our design team at home office takes care of the rest, and we get back a beautiful proof for a publication every month. So, as you know, with realtors, sometimes it's a challenge to get them to stay on track with we have a deadline in 2 weeks. We've got to do this because they're busy. And sometimes we fall short on our deadline a little bit. We have a little bit of grace, which is nice from our company. But that's the back end of it, basically.
Yeah, I think we've been on that end of it too. When you needed something from us and we didn't get it to you.
That's okay. So we'll pivot. Yeah. We got backup options if we need to,
Yeah.
So.
Well, that we appreciate that. So talk about the larger picture. What impact do you think this has had on Fort Wayne?
So I'll start with let's start with Fort Wayne first, and then I want to talk about more the national level as well, the regional. So so Fort Wayne, I think, and this isn't, I'm not going to take all the credit for this, but I really believe that when we look at, we talked about how many realtors are in our market. There's around 2,000 realtors in the Northeast Indiana area. The reality is, if you look at the numbers, the bottom 300 or 400 of those agents did anywhere from 0 to 1 home last year. So there's a large majority of the business being done by the top 20%. And so when you look at who receives Real Producers in Fort Wayne, you have the top 300 doing over 70% of all the business in the market. Right. And so what's interesting about that, and what I think is what we've been able to do really successfully, is bring together that top 20%, where it doesn't matter about the brokerage that they're in. It matters more about getting to know each other through the stories that we tell. And so all the features that we do in Real Producers, there is a little bit of a business aspect to it, but it is much more of a personal get to know that person. I like to say we take the realtor mask off of people, and we're able to share about their journey and maybe what they love to do for fun, and just get to know that person at a deeper level. And so I've heard from agents over the years many, many times that their favorite part is simply knowing someone that's on the cover. You've heard of them before. Maybe you've done a deal with them a couple of times, but they've never had a chance just to get to know that person. And so just being able to read about each other, because guess what? If the majority of the business is done by that top 20%, they're running into each other more often during deals, right? So it makes it so much smoother and easier in the transactions when they get to know each other at a personal level. And so I think that's one big thing for sure. The second thing comes down to the vendors, and this comes more from my backstory, but we used to work and sell Cutco knives. I'm sure everybody's heard of those. We
got them.
Yep, they're awesome. I got cuts to prove it, so I can show you, zoom in on a cut.
Yeah, all you got to do is send them in and get them sharpened. You'll be sure to have a cut the next week.
That's right. You're going to have a cut 100%. But really, Real Producers stemmed off of a problem that we saw with our Cutco business. And so Remington, who's our founder, along with probably 25 of our other publishers nationally, all have the same Cutco background. And so we were all in charge of doing closing gifts for agents. And so we would brand on the knife with their logo, their name, their phone number. And so just like you as a home inspector or a lender or a title company, we were attempting to reach realtors all the time to sell them closing gifts or marketing strategies. And so the problem, though, and I'm sure you've run into this over the years, is that real estate truly is a pay-to-play model. There's no open door offices. You can't just walk in there and show your stuff. You have to maybe bring breakfast or lunch, and then you get to sponsor and you get to speak for 2 or 3 minutes at the team meeting. You might do a board event. You might go to a golf outing, a bowling tournament. Maybe Remax or Keller Williams has an event. You sponsor a table there. We did all of that stuff. And so the problem that we really saw, though, was the amount of top producers that were actually selling real estate are very low at those events, right? So a lot of times at the team meetings, it's newer agents who are learning, and nothing wrong with those people, but they just haven't sold enough volume for us to sell them $5,000 of closing gifts yet. Right. They haven't had their first deal, right? So that disconnect on what we were spending versus who was actually in the room at most of the things was really the driving factor behind real producers starting. And so I just know, like from our standpoint and going back to helping Fort Wayne, I really know the vendors that partner with us, if they implement and use our platform, that's a big if, right? Because I know that's part of the struggle, and I treat the word partnership very seriously. I can do everything I can to open up the gates and the doors for you, but you still have to step through that door and come to the events and be engaged and ask us to help with connections and those types of things for you to really maximize our partnership together. And so businesses that do that, they reap the benefits and rewards, and they see a lot of growth. And so I think as over the years, we've seen that community get so strong where our events are very, very well attended. We have a lot of the top producers in the room, which allows these vendors to have really cool access to not make a bunch of sales during that time, but just build relationships. That's where it starts. It starts at the relationship level.
Well, I think everybody likes to be recognized for doing a good job.
100%.
And I think this magazine does that.
Yep.
Who gets their picture on a poster?
Right.
3-4 foot high, or however big the posters are.
Yep.
The front of a magazine. And we get it. It's local, but nobody outside of local cares anyhow.
No, absolutely not.
It's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Really. And so.
Yeah, we call it appreciation marketing is really what it is. And so, the realtors, since everything we do for them is free, it's pretty cool that, a lot of them are some of my best friends. I mean, they love what we do. They love our platform. And so then it makes a really easy kind of way for me to be able to connect our partners then, because they trust us, they know what we do, they love our platform, and they know that we have a trusted list of great vendors. And so it's easy for us to kind of play middleman between the two parties to connect people then through the magazine, the events, the social stuff, all of those things.
Well, it's valuable because I think the new school inspectors really try to work with agents. The old school inspectors was more like, I got a job to do. My word is the final authority.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think, that kind of thing. And there's always that natural tension, I think, between, inspectors and a real estate agent. Because a real estate agent is like, well, if I didn't have that inspection to deal with, this would be a lot easier sometimes. And so you do a great job of bringing that together, and it's a partnership. We've got to work together on that.
Absolutely.
So the current economy, how's that affecting things with your magazine, with real estate agents? Election years are always exciting, especially the last half of it. So we're just getting ready to go into that. So briefly talk about how that's affecting things, if any. What have you noticed?
The market does depend, it does make differences in our business a little bit. The cool part is that relationships and building those and business coming from relationships always will be a thing, no matter what the market is doing. One common thing I've seen over the years is asking lenders, agents that were here during 2008 when the crash happened, and those that made it through that, there's one common factor. All of them will tell you that we had great relationships during that time that helped us get through that crisis. And so it wasn't that there wasn't business in 2008. There was definitely business in 2008. Was there less of it? 100%. But those that were still producing the business were most likely some of the top producing agents, and those who had connections to them and relationships, they made it through as well, right? And so I would say we haven't seen anything quite like that, but we have gone through what I would call a changing market, where 2020, 2021 was definitely not a normal market. And a lot of people came into that getting the idea that real estate's easy, because at that point it really was, just call it what it is. Everybody was fat and happy. Business was flowing in.
You couldn't even get your sign stuck in the yard.
No, you couldn't get the sign in, and people were selling. So you could be, no offense, the worst agent on the planet, and you were still seeing success because the market was just calling for that, right? And so what we're living in now is what I would just say a normal market, right? But coming along with a normal market and a shifting from what we saw to now definitely makes it harder on particularly lenders. Lenders definitely have a harder time because the rates have hiked up, right?
Yep.
There's no refi business at this point, which makes it difficult because obviously that was a large majority of people's business during the low 2-3 interest rate. Unbelievable. Everybody was refinancing, right? So you had all that business, and now that's disappeared. And so I think the national landscape, what we've seen is lenders are still our largest category. We hands down still sell the most lenders out of any category. They have the most to gain because they're directly tied to almost every transaction. But I will say it's maybe instead of calling 5 lenders and selling 1 or 2, it's maybe taking 10 lenders to meet with to sell 1 or 2, just simply because their business is in a different place and maybe they don't have as much money coming in. So that, from our standpoint, that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen affect, but it's minimal in the scope of things because at the end of the day, the good lenders, the home inspectors, the title companies that realize that in a down market, which I wouldn't even call it a down market, it's just a little bit different than it was. This is when market share is gained, right? So this is the time when, and I've heard this from a lot of our awesome lender partners, that they actually love it when the market's like this because it gives them the time and opportunity to go out to network, to build relationships. Back when it was, so crazy, they were stuck in their office from 5 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. They were not leaving. They were so busy. They had no time to network and build connections. But right now is the time to do that for sure.
I think the attitude we've taken too in a market like that, where it's maybe not this year, but in a few years, it's been down, less sales. There's less business, so we got to go get more of it.
100%.
So that's where you crank up your marketing. That's where you crank up your effort. It's your chance to shine.
Yeah.
Really. The greatest stock people that buy stocks, when do they buy them? When the market tanks, right? Because it's a buyer's market. So in any market, there's opportunity.
100%.
And it's not a time to be fearful. It's a time to be ready to have all your systems in place so you can take advantage of that.
And even double down in some cases. I mean, that's what I preach. And it's not for us to gain more partners, but truly because it's what economics is. And so there's plenty of instances out there I've shared at some other events or masterminds I've hosted in the past. But during a down market, there's a lot of indications or actually examples of this in the past history of things. So a couple for you would be back in 2007 is when the iPhone was launched. So right before the crash of everything. You know what happened in 2008 during the crash? They set records for how many iPhones they sold, right? And because they took time to innovate, to spend more money when the market was in a bad place, and that paid off dramatically. Now they're the world leader in selling, accessories and phones and all that stuff. And then there's different stuff as well where during the other recessions that have happened, there's other companies that took advantage of that by doubling down on their marketing when others were cutting back. And guess who came out on top? Those other companies that spent more during that time, right?
Yeah, so it really
it's important.
Cream rises to the top in those scenarios. So finally, just some personal reflection. What keeps you going in this? Highly successful, 7 years in.
Yeah.
What's your broader purpose in doing something like this? What drives you each day?
Yeah. I've always said this, my favorite part about what we do is just getting to sit down with the agents and hear their stories. And I know some places across the country, some publishers delegate this to someone else, but like for me, that's always something that I will be doing just because it's one of my favorite parts is just sitting down, hearing people's journeys. We've had plenty of times laughing and crying with people, just hearing, because not very often do you get to sit and just reminisce on your story, right? And the people we're sitting with are the best of the best. They're top producing agents, and they're so busy, go all the time that it's very uncommon for them just to sit and reflect, right? And so for me, that's something that's really special that drives me just to continue to meet more people. And I love the mindset of like, we have only built our business off of connecting with people one-on-one. Like we never go market to the masses. We don't even broadcast to offices at one time. Like we want to meet one-on-one. And so what we've built is really brick by brick. It's every agent hopefully becomes a new advocate for us, right? People that maybe have heard of us but don't know all the depth details of what we do. Like that's super fun. So I really think, and part of what drives me too is I remember And when I looked at the Fort Wayne market of purchasing that franchise, there were definitely conversations at that point 7 years ago when we were maybe 23rd to launch across the country. So we were still in a place where we didn't really know what worked and what didn't. We were just trying off of what worked in Indy and other cities. And we're like, hey, it worked here, try it in Fort Wayne. If it works, great. But Fort Wayne was, and to this day, is still one of our smaller markets across the country, agent-wise. So there's most markets have way more realtors than our market does.
Yeah.
And so what's been cool is for us to look at that 8 years ago and say, this is what we think is probably possible here. And then looking at where we are now, we kind of blew that out of the water. And so I like just, waking up every day knowing like we have endless potential, even in a small market. So it's kind of setting the tone and the stage for what's possible for these other small markets across the country. So that motivates me a little bit too, because with Real Producers, I do help coach and train some of our new launches. And we've had some very unique situations. Even recently, we launched someone that her territory is actually the whole state of Montana, the whole state. Right, you know how big Montana is? It's huge.
Yeah, it's big.
It's big from a whole statewide land perspective, but population-wise, it's really in 3 market centers, but they're about 3 to 4 hours apart. And so, how do we connect people from one area to another area 4 hours away? There are some different challenges that I think we've overcome here that will help with those types of launches as well. So it is fun to kind of keep pushing the limits, see what's possible. It gives us more opportunity to launch things, bring value. That's the goal. We want to see everybody raise with the tide. And so it's like, if we can bring more value any way that we can, that's really what we want to do. So
yeah, well, that's awesome. In this digital age, the more interpersonal connections we can have, I think
100%.
benefits all of us. So
well,
thanks for coming in today, John.
Yeah.
You're passionate about it. We love that. We like rubbing shoulders with you, hoping some of that rubs off on us.
100%.
So
you guys are awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching today, folks. Make sure you share this across all your platforms. Share it to everybody you know. And give John a call if something you can do or you want to be in Real Producer Magazine one way or another. That's the guy to call right there.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Take care.